Friday. Please let me know if you have any questions on this. So, and one more thing is, I have a couple of assignments in the Linux, so I'll be sharing those, at the end of the class. So please try to solve those things. Okay, and if you have any questions, we can discuss also. Okay, that involves, I mean, that kind of an assignments involves, and I have included a couple of questions from a couple of interviews which I've been asked to, when I'm interviewing a couple of people. Okay, so the similar way, I mean, which is very basic part and nothing greater. I mean, which is very smaller only, because in interview we don't only even look for all the DevOps rules. Also, we also look for some of the Linux administration commands, and also we will share those also at the end of the session. Okay, I hope you are clear with this. Please let me know if you have anything in the comment, or you can talk to me. No problem. I'll be end of the today. I'll be sharing a couple of assignments here. Okay, let's get started. Okay. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. Okay, cool. Sandeep, is everyone here, or anyone is missing? Okay. Okay, fine. No problem. Okay, guys. So from now onwards, right? Even last session also, what I've done, what I requested you is, please make sure you have a one virtual box in your, in your laptop or in your desktop. So we've been seeing how to install the Ubuntu and using virtual box also. Why I'm telling you now is, from now onwards, whatever the tools that we are going to learn, everything is a practical part. Everything is a practical part now. So right, I would suggest you to do the same thing, like have your own local environment set up using a virtual box and with the Ubuntu server. So this would be helpful to do practice everything. Okay. So, and even right from now onwards, so what I would suggest you is, if possible, you can try along with me. Not now, I mean, especially while we are learning about the GitHub and all. Okay. Okay, meanwhile, let me start my Ubuntu server here. And what I do is, let's start about, uh, right? Okay. Okay. Now let's talk about a little bit history of GitHub. Okay. Hey guys, before doing that part, anyone, okay? So how many of you guys have set up the virtual box in your environment? I mean, in your local box. Please let me know. I mean, if it is not, we can create it. I mean, you can try, when you are free, but make sure you have. Oh my God, what is this? Okay, it's asking me. What I do is, well, get out of this. I'll use a free trial now. Yeah, I've not heard anyone. I hope no one has done the Ubuntu installation on your local machine. Is that correct? Since I have not received any response. Okay, assuming no one has done that. Okay, someone has replied. Yeah, Naveen, right? Okay, Sainath, Nanda. Okay. Okay, thanks, Nanda. Thank you. Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm blessed with the baby boy. Right, thank you. Okay, nice. Okay, Naveen and Saina, they have installed the Linux in their environment. Okay, right. Yeah, and my request is please everyone do the same thing. Like you should have your own thing part of it. Okay. Fine. Go around and let me choose another one. Then we'll talk about this. Mm, okay, fine. Yeah. So what I want is a small little bit history about you know, the source code management tool. Okay. Especially what is happening. I hope we remembered we have talked a little bit history about Linux also in our early classes when we are learning about the Linux. Okay, right? The philosophy or the thing is which I follow is, I'll try to learn some if I'm starting, I mean, if I'm learning any new tool, right? How I do start is, for example, someone has hired me and they hired me for one company. They asked me to learn some this tool. I don't say no, I can't learn. I do say like, I require some time and then I learn it. This is what I do say. And when I started learning, right, first I'll try to learn about why that tool is exist. What is the reason behind that? I mean, the small history about that tool. Then I'll get a good understanding of the global view of why that tool exists. Then what kind of tools? What are the different tools? Where this tool is stands in between when compared with other tools, right? This is how I start learning if I'm learning any of the new tool. The same way I'm teaching for my students also. That's why for every tool which I mentioned, right, I'll just include some small kind of a history about it. Okay. Now what we are talking about is in 1970s there is something called, you know there are multiple versions of the source code management system. For example, uh, this I mean now we are talking about the source code management tool, but it is a version control system. Okay, this is also some people would have mentioned in their job description, either source code management tools or the version control systems and something, right? Whatever it is mentioned, they are talking about the GitHub or Bitbucket or GitLab. So these are the current trending source code management tools or version control system. They have been following it, but it's don't confuse if someone is mentioned either source code, SCM, or VCS. Okay. Now let's talk about in 1970s. What does it happen is there are something called single file modifications. Okay, so for example, I open a notepad. Okay, and then if I start typing it here, right? Okay, if I start typing it here and I'm saving it, and what does it happen is there is no save on something. I mean, there is a save actually, but the thing is, for example, if I'm saving it here again, and if I open it again and then modifying it, and it will be very, you know at the time in the first generation, what does it happen is it is not that much as friendly as it now. Okay, it was very difficult if we want to save some data in a file and open it and edit it and then add something and then save it again, right? There is a lot of redundancy, and even if we want to share with someone, right, it is not possible basically. So what they have done is they have introduced the save open. I mean, I think in the Linux, we have learned something about VA editor, right? So we have used some kind of a commands like escape, and press I for insert mode, press W for writing mode, exit for, quit mode and everything. Okay. So this was very somewhat a simple way, but earlier in the first generation, right, it was very, very difficult to that. So, okay. That's why they have, it was very difficult when we want to deal with the single file also. Okay. And even there is no networking, meaning there is no sharing of the files also. We can't able to share the files between systems also, meaning there is a network for the communication, but not with the file sharings. There is nothing like that. They would have been done like hardware. They use some hardware and then copying something like that. So at that time, in order to solve this, right, they have introduced something called source code control system. I mean, which is like a source code control system, and sorry, control system, and something called RCES also, which is a revision control system also. Okay, these are the tools. Right? Let me put it this way. Now we know about the GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket, right? Now we are talking about in 1970s. The tools that they exist in the 1970s was in the first generation. The tools are source control systems or revision control systems. These are the tools that they have been exited. And later on, there are a lot of improvements is going on, and then what they have done is they started implementing a functionality for multiple files handling and all. Okay, and they have introduced something called centralized means here there is no networking at all. This is the first generation. Okay, this is the first generation, and now we are talking about the second generation. In the second generation, whatever the problems in the first generation, they try to solve in the second generation, and they come up with the feature called multiple file sharings, and even it is a centralized version. And even right, what they have done is, for example, you open a file, edit it, right? What they are doing is, instead of creating a multiple copies of files, right, what they have done is, whatever the changed or either added or deleted, right, they started off recording that instead of handling the entire files, right? For example, if I open my drive and if I want to take a backup of any of the source code, right, what I do is I'll be taking a backup, meaning I'll recreate it and then save it. I'll do the copy and then exit it. So like that, if I edit it for 100 times, right, my entire drive will be saved up or filled up with the entire 100 files itself. It is a data redundancy kind of thing. Instead of, what they are doing is they are capturing the changes what you have done between the previous version and the new version in the second generation. That is what they are doing, and not only with the single file, they are doing with the multiple files also. Okay, so, and even one more thing is they have centralized it. Earlier, right, what they have done is, for example, this is a single computer, and whatever the files they are saving here, right, everything will be located under their computers. But in the second generation, what they have done is, for example, you and me, and there is a centralized repository here. For example, of course, this is a database symbol, but still, right, what they have done is they have they are connected to a centralized location where everyone can able to access, meaning there is a network enable, which was a problem in the first generation. In the second generation, they have solved the networking issue with the centralized version. Okay, in the centralized version, this is what happened in the second generation. In the second generation, the tools that they have invented or they introduced this, right, what they have done is centralized version system and VSS, which is a Microsoft Visual Source Safe, which is a which is a product of the Microsoft Visual Source Safe. And at the same time, I think you might have heard about the SVN also, which is a subversion system. And there are some other tools also like TFS, okay, TFS, Preforce. So these are the tools that they have been introduced in the second generation. And in the third generation, which means this is around, I think, 1990s, I guess, right? In the third generation, which is starting from 2005 or 4, I'm not sure exactly. This is where all our GitHub right? GitHub has come into picture. From 2008 or 9 onwards, Git and GitHub is very popular because let's talk about what problem it is trying to solve from the second generation to third generation and all. Okay, in the third generation, what they have done is there is a problem which has happened. For example, this is a centralized place. What if this is goes down here? Meaning you have shared, you have stored some data here, and this server has become down or it is not reachable. So no one able to do or logging into the centralized and can't able to work. What do you mean by centralized means? For example, you are logging into a server which is in remotely placed, and then working here, and then saving it here its own, and then you are exiting here. So whatever the work that you have done, it has been saving in the remote machine, which is a centralized place. Okay, this is the remote version. What if the problem is, if this goes down, no one able to access it, or no one able to solve the issue also. Okay, that's why what they have done is they have introduced something called distributed centralized version system. Meaning, even though it is a centralized, but it isn't distributed. Distributed means, for example, once you saved the code in a centralized version, whatever it is saved, right, it will immediately distribute it to all its members. Okay, for example, if there are 12 or 13 people, right, it will immediately distribute it. So even though if it is centralized goes down here, it will be since it is a distributed, we won't lose any of the data. That's why it is a centralized distribution version control system. They are mentioning it here. In the third generation, the problem they have solved is a centralized distribution version control system here. Okay, and in the third generation, they have introduced something called change sets. How they have implemented it is by using one of the concept called change sets, which we don't require to learn. Which is a very internal, and the logic behind the GitHub, how it has been distributed. And one more thing is it is a distributed because of using some of the concept called change sets, and they have used a distribution version control system here. In the third generation, what kind of tools that we have used? As I mentioned here, GitHub, Bajar, and Bitkeeper. Okay, these are the tools which was being popular or was being there in the 2004 and 5. Later on, we have these tools called GitLab from last, I think, 5 years, around 2018 or 19. We do have GitLab and Bitbucket. Okay, but underneath of either GitHub or Bitbucket or GitLab, right, the internal tool is Git only. Okay, so this is the main thing. And the main difference, see, some people or some job description, they would have mentioned like they need to learn Git, they need to know GitHub also, something like that. Okay, don't worry, these are the almost similar one. Almost similar means Git is a CUI tool, which is a command line interface user tool, and GitHub is a web application of a Git only. So what they have done is they have webified. Webified means they converted or they have enabled the interaction with the web instead of CUI, and they are calling it as a GitHub. A GitHub, right? Hub means a centralized location of Git repositories, simply. Okay, with the web application only. Okay, no need to worry. For example, if you know how to use a Bitbucket or GitLab or GitHub, you already know about how Git also is working. Okay, so meaning if someone tell you, do you know GitHub and do you know Git means, when someone asks you, GitHub, you already know Git also already. Okay, and it's not a what do you say means, it's not a separate one. First we will learn Git, then we will be learning about the GitHub also. The difference is When you say Git, all you work with the commands only. But in a GitHub, which is a web application like a Gmail or some other SaaS application, right? The similar way, a SaaS application for the Git also. Okay, any questions, guys? Please let me know if you have any questions. You can talk to me, no problem at all. No one has talked. This is the weird thing, right? At least someone will be talking in my classes at anyway. But this is the first class, no one is talking. Of course, it will take time, but still, right? If you have any questions, you can talk to me, no problem at all. Since you don't have not messaging, I mean, not confirming, I want everyone's confirmation. Is it clear or any questions here? Okay, thanks, Navin. You are good. Okay. Okay, what about others? I'm still waiting for others confirmation. Okay, sign up, thank you. So what we are going to learn is, we are going to learn first Git, which is like, okay, thanks Tejasvi. Okay, Nanda, thank you. Okay, now what we are going to learn is, first we will learn a Git, and then next we'll learn about the GitHub. Okay, why? Because if you know some of the how to work with the Linux command, I mean Git, so you would be doing the same thing with the GitHub also, but in the web-based application we would be doing it here. Okay, in the Git, right, while we are learning a Git, what we do is, a Git is a command line tool. This will be there for almost every OS. I mean, Windows based OS, Mac based, Linux also here. For example, if it is a Windows, right, what will happen is, there is something called MySysGit. This is the one of the tool, and another one is a Git Bash. Okay, this is the tools that we will be installing in a Windows based machine. Okay, but if it is if we are working on a Linux based machine, there is something called simply Git on. For Mac also, the tool name is also Git here. I mean, for example, if you want to install apt-get install Git or apt install Git. For Windows, right, what we do is, we will be downloading MSI file or .zip file of a Git bash, and then we will start working on a Git. Okay, so this is what some information about the a Git that we are going to learn. We will be using a GitHub. Since this is a web application, we don't require any OS specific requirement like Linux or Mac or Windows something. It is a web application. You can open your browser and then we can access it here. Okay. And one more thing is, just a minute. As I forgot to mention about something related to the Git here. All right. The tool which was developed of Git is the person, right? You remembered there is a guy called Linux Other, right? His name is Linus Tornos or something. I forgot, but his name is a Linus. He's the other who has invented the Linux here. What he has done is, he was using, I mean, when he is writing a Linux, right, he has faced a lot of problems with the second generation tools, for example, centralized versions and all. I mean, he's the author of the Linux, right? What he has done is, while he is developing a Linux, he is already using the second generation tools. Since he was been facing a lot of issues with the second generation tools, like especially the centralized version, multiple files handling, and easy to read, a lot of problems are there, right? What he has done is, he has stepped up and then started finding the solutions for the second generation problem. And especially what they have done is, just a minute, okay, second generation problems. And then he started, providing solutions like, you remember there are 1200 user base for the Linux open source control system. I mean, there are 1200 people who are contributing to the Linux actually. So that's why he was faced a lot of issues how to handle multiple files in a huge distributed environment for him. meaning, right? For example, we all are, if you are contributing to any of the open source control, it is very difficult to maintain the changes, who has done what, when he is doing, and what kind of way to merge, and all this information, or this information is not able to properly capture. And he started about how I can solve it. Then he started writing his own tool called Git in order to tackle the above problems which he's facing while contributing in the Linux problem. Okay, so this is how he has invented it. Then he started again, what do you mean says, he started again publicized whatever he has invented, which is he made as a open source again. Meaning, right? If how do open source means, basically, why do they open source it? Because no one should use the tool for the commercialized purpose. Of course, that the latter it got changed, but initially when he has open source it, he got a, he makes sure no one should be using the uh, for Git for the commercialized purpose. Then that's how it has been invented here. Okay? Now what I do is, since what we do is, let's install the Git bash here. Okay, since my base OS is a Windows, I can do that. Otherwise, in your Linux, right, I would prefer, instead of doing a Git bash, you can do either GitHub, either Windows based, or 1 minute. Okay, either you can use any of the tools. For example, here, uh, mostly you can, if you are comfortable, not like comfortable, I would prefer you to do with the Linux only. Okay, and even if you have Windows, now I'll show that as well. Okay, for example, if I type a Git here, no one is, Git is already installed in my Linux server, since it is a server version. Okay, we don't need to specifically install. If it is a desktop version, right, what we do is apt install Git. That's it. We would be getting a Git tool will be get installed here. Okay, so since it is saying it's already installed, that's how we will be installing in the Linux. If it is the Mac, we will use a brew, like which is a brew is another package manager for the Mac OS. That's it. And let's try to download the Git bash for the Windows here. The Git bash is a, what does it do is, it will provide you a Linux environment within a Windows OS. That is the main aim of GitHub. Git bash here. Since I have already installed, I'm not able to installing it again. But this is how you come to Git bash, downloads here, download for Windows here, and it will automatically get installed here itself. Okay. So once it is got in, it's just like click and all, something like that. Since it is MSI file, no need to worry, and you can just directly install it. Okay, now let's get into, once it is installed, you can navigate your, start programs, and then search for the Git bash, and it will automatically open here. Meaning, what does it do is, let me open a command prompt here of a Windows here. Okay, this is a Windows command prompt here. The Linux commands won't work here, but in case of a Git bash, right, most of the Linux commands will work here. Okay, in Windows, pwd is not working to see what is the present working directory here, and in Windows, dir is a command which will show you the list of the files here. But in case of ls and pwd will work automatically. Okay, and some of the, basically most of the Linux commands would work in the Git bash here. Okay. Okay, now since we have already done it, right, what we do is, there are some commands here. Can someone do along with me? Meaning, if you are installed, can you try something like git config -- list here? If you are not able to do, fine, but you can watch it here. But I would prefer if someone is able to, ready to share your screen and do it along with me. I can instruct. Anyone volunteer? What I want is, if you I mean, I won't open your screen, I mean, show your screen, and then you can try along with me. I can instruct you and all. If no one is there, I can do it, but I would prefer if someone is doing. Okay, fine, no problem. Yeah, if you're still on, you can message me so we can switch back to your screen. Okay, here. Okay, there is a command. What we do is, first thing is, there are multiple levels of configuration. First thing is we have to configure our git bash or our git related here. Okay, so there are three levels of it. Okay, what does is one is a system level configuration here. Okay, three levels of a configs here for the git here. One is a system level, another one is user level, another one is repo level. Okay, these are the three configurations that we do configure in our repository. See, one thing is, when I say git, right, it is always talking about the local repository. I mean, local means whatever I'm doing with the git right now is everything is saving in the my local machine, not to the remote machine. When we learn about repositories or URLs, right? Remote repository, something, right? That is where it will be distributed. Whatever the commands that you do with the git, right? Everything will be locally only, not in the remote machine. Okay. For example, now let's see what we do is here. Now, whatever I have shown you is right. This is a global level configuration. Git config and git config -- list. Okay, now let's talk about let's see about the system level configuration. Git config -- system. Okay, so this is the system. Where is this here? Use the config file, meaning what we do is here, if you see here, these are the levels of the configuration which I'm talking. Global one, which is the system, system level, local level, which is a repository level that we do here. Okay, and user level means which are the same like what we have, meaning right, where do we use a system, user level of configuration is when we are working with the multiple repositories instead of one repository with the different usernames and password, right? I'll tell you an example. You might tell us, sir, we will work for only one organization, right? How do we know which organization or something? Generally, what will happen is most of the consultant will be working with a multiple organization. And even also, if you are working in one company, you have to collaborate with other company. So at that time, their source code will be in their own source code management tool, and your company's organization code will have your own your own source code management tool. So this way, you need to work with a multiple configuration. Multiple different repository of a different organization. That's where we would be using a global and system level of configurations here. Okay. Now, what we should be doing is, along with this, we have to pass some configuration file here. Meaning we have to create a separate configuration file for the system, user level, and global level. We won't be doing it now. Just simply, I'll show you just by git global config file. By default, there will be. Okay. Let me open images here so we can see easily all of them. Okay, so where does it? So there is some configuration file like this, and we would be seeing that as well when we create a repository here. Okay, by using a git init command here. Okay, that we'll get here, but just showing you this is how it will looks like. What does it happen? This is a small example of when you do git status, right? Similarly, there is one separate configuration file which we will be working. Okay, I'll show that as well. Okay, first now let me configure my user specific things. This is whenever you start working on GitHub, right? First, I mean Git, right? First you have to configure your information here. Okay, global user dot name and my name. All right. So now I have seen all the information here. See now let me change my email ID as well now. First thing is you have to set up your username and email ID. Why? Because whatever the commits that you done or whatever the commits that you do push, right? Everything will be tracked with this username and this email ID. That's why these are the two major things that you need to configure here. Okay. So this is my thing is, and now let's list out of all the stuff here. Okay. So this is how we do configure our basic username and email ID. Okay. Now what we do is, see, there is automatically one file got created. Now let me open it. So I'm using cat to display the git config here. Whenever you do some kind of a configurations of a user level or global level or the system level, this configuration file will be get created automatically with the settings of, this is called, right, a simple language which we would be learning. I mean, we don't deal with that. Okay, someone asked me, how do we get a email ID? See, that's you. I mean, we don't get separate email ID. Whatever you have created personal email ID, you can use it and then save it here. Why do you need to use your email ID? Is because for every commits that anyone done or any push or something, right, the notification will be forwarded to this email ID. So you will be notifying whatever the events which has happened on the repository. That's why you need to provide an email ID. If you provide a false email ID, that's fine, everything will work. Okay, but you won't get notified. Even if you don't configure, that is fine. What will happen is, if someone, let me show you here. If you don't put anything, right, you won't find who has done of what here. For example, this guy, if you open here, right, Shwaradi Pradeep and something, so we won't get, if you don't get configured the username, we won't get this information. We will be get a blank. At the same time, in the commits history, right, we won't be getting a email ID also. Somewhere we won't see the email IDs here, but in the, okay, I think when we create a repository, we will get a list of email ID and all also. I got only my username. Okay, right. Okay, fine, cool. No problem. Now let's create a folder for me. See, one thing is, whatever you are doing, right, what you need to do is, don't create as it is. Create a separate folder like this. Now where I'm, okay, I'm under my home directory. What I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna download and create a folder called Git Learning. Okay, right? Because I want, if I do something, right, or everything will be in this folder only. But if you do something in your home directory or some other directory, right, everything will be get tracked here. And not only this, if something goes wrong, right, not only with the Git we are learning, if you are doing some kind of a POCs, right, you should be creating a separate folder and then do it within that folder. So if something happens, we can dismantle that folder itself, or we can delete it. Basically, that's why we require this. Okay, now I have created a separate folder and I navigated it. So what I just destroyed it here. So what I'm doing is, I'm creating another folder called mkdir. Why? Because I want a repository. A repository name is my Git repo. This is my repository. You can tell what is a repository, sir. Repository is a folder which will be exactly work like a project and which will have some tracking events with the help of a Git tools here. Okay, I mean, this is a generic definition. If you open a web application, right, you would see a different definition. Different definition means which everyone would following it. So simply, if you want to understand, a repository is nothing but a project location or a project which will store a list of files or the programs, whatever we have developed here, and it will be tracked with the some of the Git events and Git libraries. Okay, so we will learn more about it. Okay, just 1 minute here. So the first thing is, when you created any of the repository, right, what you need to do is you have to initialize. Initialize, it means, hey Git, please initialize this as a repository. So what will happen is, okay, initialize an empty Git repository, meaning when you created a folder, right, it will be a folder only. But whenever you do a Git init, what does it do? It initialize the Git repository. What is meant by initialize? What does it mean is, for example, you have a place on a 1 acre or 2 acre of a place. What if that is a land, empty land? You can convert that 1 or 2 acres of land as a, right, some home or restaurant or some kind of a commercialized place and everything. You are being converting it, right? In the similar way, you created a folder, which is a normal folder, and then you are telling, hey Git, please initialize. What does it mean? It will convert that folder to a Git repository, meaning what does it do is Git will keep on track what's happening in this particular repository, this particular folder. How does it to track is, when you do Git init, what will happen is it will create automatically with a couple of folder. This is a hidden folder. Okay, when you just type ls, it won't show you. When you provide -a, it will show you the hidden folders also. Let's see what is there under the Git here. Okay, now this is the underneath. It will keep on tracking. For example, if you created any file or modified it, deleted it, or created all the things, right? Everything will be get created. Everything will be get tracked with the help of this. Okay. For example, even when you created a branches, what is branch? What is the changes? What are the logs? What are the hooks? We will learn about what are all the branches, hooks, and everything. Okay, but just bear with me the simple steps here. First, what you do is Git init, you would be doing it, which will enable your initialize, which will enable, the Git events to track under this folder. Okay, when you do Git init. Now, next thing is you just display, just type ls here to check if any files are here. Another in a similar versions of it is Git status. What does it mean is it has been shown here. So far we have learned Git init to initialize the Git repository, folder as a repository. And the next command is Git status. What does it do is it will just show the status of what you have done and what are the changes Git is tracking under this branch. Git is saying, hey dude, you are on the branch master and no commits yet. And if you want to do something or commit, right, you have to use a Git add here to track something. I'll tell you what does it mean is a branch master. Okay, for example, whenever you created a repository, right? For example, you have created this repository. By default, the repository name, see, why this we are been using this GitHub tool is to maintain the version controls. Version control means to change or to track different versions of the same file here. That's why what they have mentioned is this is a branch. They are differentiating. They have introduced this feature with the name of called a branch. Branch means similar set of it. Okay, for example, the default branch, when we created a new repository, what will happen is the branch name is a master branch, sometimes main branch. Master branch earlier we are calling. Nowadays, if we create any repository in the GitHub, the branch name by default is a main branch. From the main branch, we are going to create a multiple branches here. Okay, what is a branch again here? The same set with the duplicate version of it here. This is where we do have a different types of Git strategies will come. Okay, for example, the GitHub branching strategy, meaning some people will have a, let me put it this way. We'll learn more about this, but just a glimpse of it. Once you created any repository, just remember the repository in the branch will be a main branch. From the main branch, what they do is they will be creating a development branch. Okay, I mean, same set of version, but it will be tracked separately. For example, if you've done some changes here, it won't be reflected here, even though it is a copied from the same thing until you do merge it. Okay, there is something called merge again. From the now, what I'm telling you is just a glimpse of branching strategy. This is one of the interview questions, and even everyone will. If you put the GitHub as in your resume, someone definitely will ask you what is a branching strategy that you do follow. Okay, strategy means, for example, right, the way how you organize the branches in your organization. That's it. What they do understand. Someone asks what is the Git branching strategies. What they do expect from you is they will expect, do you know what are the different types of branches, where do you use those, and how do you create it? That is what the interviewer will expect you from. If someone asks from you, if someone asks what is a GitHub branching strategy, meaning what you do, I'll tell you that now. For example, this is a from the main branch you would create another branch called develop. From the development branch, people will be starting creating the feature branches or bug branches. For example, let's take here, there is a, for example, Facebook. Okay, it has a 5 features. That 5 features could be, right, chat, video call, messages, post, status, something like this. These are the 5 features. What they do is, once the developer has developed these 5 features, they will use a GitHub as, if they use a GitHub as the source code management tool. With the basic features, they will push their code into GitHub repository, whatever they have created. By default, it will be under the main branch here. I mean, this main branch, for example, this main branch has a 5 features. What they do is, for example, if they want to invent a sixth feature, what they do is they don't directly create a feature from this branch. What they do is they'll create a separate branch. Then they are saying development branch. Why? Means every branch represents a environment. Environments, for example, in every organization or every product will have a different environments. What are those? Production, okay, staging, pre-production, QA, development. Okay, so these are the environments would be having most of the companies. Some people will have only 2 environments, a production and development. Some environments will have a pre-prod or staging. Some people will have a QA branch or QA environment, meaning, I'll tell you what does it mean is, production means real user access, meaning, for example, the facebook.com, which is a production of the Facebook here. I mean, the real user is able to access. Okay, next one is a staging. What they do is, a product owners will be testing here, and project managers, everything, which is similarly like production exactly, and QA environment. This QA environment will be accessed by the QA engineers or automation engineers for testing their product. And there is similarly dev environments. Okay, right? Dev environments, the developers will be owning this environment and they are able to deploy their own features to test their features. Okay, and this is how doing this. And the QA, how do they means? First, whatever I have taken example of the 5 features of the Facebook, right? Here, what they do is, once the developers has tested their code in their dev environment, it will move to the QA environment. QA environment is a place where QA people, quality assurance people would be testing the 5 features has been properly working or not. If there are any issues, they'll revert back to the developers, and what the developers would be doing is, developers will fix it and then test it in the dev environment, again push to the QA, and the QA team will come again and then deploy in their environment. Of course, they don't deploy it. Basically, they would ask the DevOps engineer to deploy these changes into the QA environment. This is where your role will come. Once if the QA signed off means okay, 5 features are working without any issues, and it can go for the next stage, which is the staging environment. Okay? Again, DevOps person will be deploying the same branch, meaning from the whatever the changes which is there in the QA, it will be deployed in the next stage, which is a staging environment. What is a staging environment? Which will act like a production environment. Production environment is accessed by the real users, but in a staging environment, which will be accessed by the product owners. Why do the product owners means? What they do is generally these changes will be tested by the product owners, managers, and everything, which will be accessible to the internal zone. It won't be accessible for the real users or the clients. Okay, which will mimic the most of the time production and staging environments both are in a similar, no differentiate, not even no. Most of the environment should be identical, meaning no changes should be there between the environments. Why we are talking about is, in order to maintain these environments, we should have a proper branching strategy. Each environment will be pointed to some branches somehow. Okay, right? For example, it depends on how many environments that you do have. As I mentioned here, some organizations will have only just a minute. Some organizations will have only 2 environments, like production and dev. That's it. No one will be doing it. And some organizations will have 3: production, staging, and dev. Some organization will have 4. Some organization will have a 5 kind of thing. In between, there is something called staging and pre-prod. There is some other thing called pre-prod, which will be below the production. For each environment, we will be having a different branching strategies. So if interviewer asks, I mean, don't worry, we just talked about the theoretically now, but we do create a different branches practically, okay? Not the theoretical way. This is a branching strategy. We will discuss more clearly. What we do is we will discuss 2 branching strategies which are followed by most of the organizations, and we will learn that as well. Okay, any questions, guys? I know we talked a lot different terminologies, but still bear with me. When we learn about it, we will be talking. Okay, right? See, when you are attending an interview, right, you should be always talking these kind of sense, meaning you should be always keep, there are different environments, each branch will be pointing to some environment. And for example, main branch or master branch will be pointed to production environment. Staging branch is pointing to the staging environment, something like that. You have to talk about it. Okay, now let's complete this. Still, is it clear for? I want a confirmation from everyone. Can you please confirm? Thanks. I think Naveen, I think you are okay. Good, thank you. Yes. Okay, Sharanya, thank you. And any questions, guys? So we will continue. Please, I want a confirmation from everyone. Okay, right? Okay, fine. You can please continue on this. Okay. Now, as I mentioned here, right, whenever you create a repository, by default you will be under the master branch. Okay, this is one of the feature or one of the benefit by using a Git bash. If it is a Linux, right, it won't show you in which branch you are in by default. By default, in a Git bash, it will show you are in the master branch here. Okay, so in the GitHub repository, you need to type a separate command called git branch. Okay. -- show here. So you have to use something called git branch space -- show. It is saying, hey dude, you are in a master branch. You don't need to type this because it's telling you are in a master branch. When you switch to a branch, it will automatically tell you, it will automatically show that particular branch here itself. Okay. Okay. Now what we have done is git init to initialize it. Next, git status to check what are the status here. Okay, to check the status of here. Now what we do is, now let me add some folders here or some files here. Let me create a file called, I'm using a nano editor. For example, add, for example, facebook.com. Okay, so I'm just adding something here. What I'm doing is I'm saving it. To save this, I'm using a write out, which is a control O. Then, yeah, is your file name facebook.com? Yes, yes. And there are 6 lines totally. And I saved it. Now I'm exiting from the tool. If you see here, there are some helps here. Control X, Control O, something. You can just follow it. What I've done is to save it, I use a Control O to write out. And now I'm exiting. For that, I'm just pressing Control X. Control X here. So now let me check what are the files there. This is a normal general command, which we do is in the Linux. Now let me check if there is any status. Anything in the Git. Git has found that there is you are still on a branch master and no commits yet. No commits means you have not committed anything. Committed means you did not tell to Git saying that, hey dude, you please track this. Nothing you have mentioned like that. That's why it is telling no commits. Once you've done this, it will automatically tell you have done some commit something. Okay, right? So now what I do is I'll just add it. What I'm saying is, hey Git, please add facebook.com file, which I've just added to your tracking. See, it is use Git added to track. Okay, this is saying, okay, then I just executed git add and the file name. It is clearly saying I'm going to track it. Okay, right? Please ignore this warning that is been default with the some ASCII characters and something like that. Okay, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check what does it happen here using a command called git status. It's saying, hey dude, there is a one new file you have added. Do you want to commit it? If you want to commit it, what you do is git commit here. Git commit added fb.com page. Now let's check git status here. See, since you have done a commits, right? Nothing was added here. Since you have done committed, it will show you. If you want to see what are the commits we have done, git space log. You have just the commit that you have done is the commit name is added fb.com. Who has done? Other this guy, and this is the username, and this is the email ID. This is the time when they have done. Let's take it back and then understand what we have done here. We have used something called git branch hyphen status. Hyphen show. It will just show the list of them. Next one is git add and the file name. Okay, next one is git commit. These are the commands that we have just seen here. What does it happen is when you executed git add file here, it will automatically telling it is going to keep. Okay, when you say git add, Git will keep track of the changes here. And once you have done these changes, it will to save those changes, you have to use command called git commit here. Okay, so this is where you have, while executing it, you have to provide some message like this. Message like when you are if you are saving any file, right, it will ask you to give the file name for that, right? Similar way, when you are committing it, please give some message to track it. Without messages, it won't be anything. Okay, right? So for example, added fp.com. This is my message which I want. Or else I added new feature. This is what is happening. So I just executed the same thing here. And the next one, the command that we have executed is git space log. What this command does is it will just show the list of commits which is happened. For example, if you have committed 5 commits, it would just show you the latest commits, whatever it's happened. For example, in the web GitHub, right? These are the list of the commits. Same commits would be showing under me if I clone. I mean, if I clone this repository into my local. Currently, my repository called my Git repo on master branch, only one commit, that is this one. Okay, this is the commit message, this is the date, and this is the username. Okay, these are the commands, guys. Just remembering again, git init to initialize it, git status, and git add, git commit, git log. That's it. These are the some commands that we have used. Okay, any questions, guys? I think I'm okay for today, and let's continue tomorrow. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'm open for questions if you have. What I want you is I want everyone for tomorrow will execute these commands. Okay, right? I mean, I want someone to create their own repositories and add some files and do that. I'm just pressing this information. I'm assuming no one have any questions. Please let me know if you have any questions. Guys, by the way, is it clear? Is it clear first place? First. I want everyone's confirmation. Okay. Okay, thanks, Naveen. Tomorrow okay, thanks, Chandrasekhar. What I do is I'll ask someone to share your screen and then do. Why? Because, right, it will be definitely helpful you. Sometimes in interview, right, people would ask you to share your screen and then open a notepad, and then they'll ask you to write a problem statement and ask some kind of a pseudo commands. What you are going to execute, even though they won't ask you to execute, but still they'll expect from you, to write something on a notepad. So this exercise will help you in such kind of scenarios. So that's why I may ask you, but just don't worry. That is on voluntary basis, or maybe okay, that's fine then. Okay, Tejashwi, it looks like everyone is done. If you have any questions, we can discuss also. No problem. Please be ready.